Hello and welcome to Pathways, where you are invited to join me for a visit with leaders in personal development and cultural evolution. This is your host, Paul O'Brien. Today, we're going to unpack one of life's most mysterious yet practical gifts, your intuition, and how this inner knowing can open doors to better decision making, deeper self trust, and a more aligned life. As the author of a book on intuitive intelligence myself, I have a deep background in this subject and look forward to discussing it with our guest on the show today. Our guest is Nil Demircubuk. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, but the author of the book Down to Earth, Demystify Intuition to Upgrade Your Life. Nil is an intuition facilitator and guide with more than 3 decades of experience. She is also a certified professional coach. She empowers her clients and students to get in touch with their own intuition and combine it with their intellect to make better decisions, improve their relationships and performance, and live more fulfilled lives. Before her current career, Nil had studied engineering, obtained a PhD in economics, taught economics, and ran the data group in a financial technology firm as a senior director, and led human rights awareness programs in nonprofit organizations prior to shifting her focus to intuition facilitation in her coaching career. Hello, Nil, and welcome to the Pathways Show.
Hi, Paul. Thank you so much for having me here.
So, okay, why did you feel compelled to write this book? What motivated you?
I got really convinced based on my own experiences and based on how I was seeing my clients and my students get into that space of intuition and get great ideas and find solutions to problems in their lives. So that made me want to share what I had learned and what I had accumulated so far about intuition with more people and put it out there in the world. So that was the main inspiration. But what got me into even to be curious about intuition to begin with all that mixed background was something in my life. I was in a car accident with a severe head injury, and that put me into this state of having these episodes of going very calm in my mind and in my emotions. And I noticed my intuition was coming really alive in those moments.
Okay.
Ideas were popping up, solutions were coming. So I thought, okay, this is interesting. I want to learn more about it. Studied with teachers, read about it, then started doing intuition sessions with people where I would be doing the guidance, then turned it into let me show people how they can achieve that calmness so they can tap into their intuition on their own, and then led to this book.
Okay. So it was part of your practice as a coach to understand intuition and help other people understand it and access it within themselves. Um, and so is that how it came about? I mean, you were helping people make decisions and you realized that there's a lot of decisions in life that logic can't handle, like having to do with relationships or timing or negotiating strategies. And so you realized the role that intuition was playing. How did you discover your own intuition?
Yeah, my
Was
own
it from
intuition.
the accident or were you aware of it before that?
I was very aware of it as a child, and then growing up where I did in back home in my home country in Turkey, I was good in maths, and from the very early on, okay, you're gonna become an engineer, so you study really hard, become an engineer. Then I went to grad school, studied, did my PhD in economics, went into finance technology. So my analytical side, I was spending a lot of effort in on attention on. But I was kind of forgetting that intuition part. And the accident was a reminder. It was a way to make me stop being in that analytical space all the time, logic space all the time, and go into the quietness and stillness. And what came out of that was learning about the ability or remembering about the ability we all have to be able to tap into our accumulated knowledge and experiences, which is the magic of intuition. It's not magical. We all have it.
Right.
And it's just like if I had a really wise friend who was around with me all the time and had this wise friend had a lot of accumulated knowledge and experience, and I was just ignoring them the whole time and just going with my logic and my whatever I was thinking at the time consciously, not even asking this friend. It would be strange, right? But we do that with intuition. It is our capability. It's that inner wise friend that can go into everything we've learned, everything we've experienced, but consciously are not aware of anymore. We can still tap into that through going into intuition.
So how would you define intuition?
It is the ability to go into these accumulated knowledge and experiences without any prior conscious thought process. So
Mhm.
it's an idea or a sensation that pops up without any preceding chain of thought, conscious thought.
Right. You know, I have thought a lot about it. Obviously, I wrote a book about it myself,
Yeah.
and I made the point, or it seems to me, it's sort of like, you know, pattern recognition on a very cosmic level. It's sort of like it reminds me of like the way that they discovered the constellations way, thousands of years ago. And so, they filled in the dots. There's a lot of missing dots, but intuition was the ability to fill in the dots and create this pattern and understand that pattern. Does that make any sense? Do you think that's a good metaphor?
Yeah, it is a great metaphor. There is a pattern recognition is huge in intuition, and scientific studies have shown this. For example, a really really little neat puzzle. They've been in Thomas Goschke, Ann Bolt and Julius Kuhl did this study of word triad puzzles. So they gave participants three words that were either connected, coherent, or not connected. A fourth word would explain the connection between them, but that wasn't revealed to the participants. So the participants started, after a little trials, they started being able to pick up, even in weekly triads, that which words were connected. But when they were asked to explain why, how, they couldn't explain it. They couldn't come up with that connecting fourth word,
Right.
but they were able to say connected or not connected. It's a really good example of pattern recognition in that sense.
Now, you point out in your book that many people feel distrust or confusion about their intuition. And why is that? Is it because we live in this culture that promotes left brain intelligence?
Yeah, yeah, I never say directly trust your intuition no matter what, because intuition requires practice. It requires being able to interpret what it's saying, because sometimes intuition is right, but we interpret it wrong. For example, if intuition, if I'm going to go to left and on my path and something feels heavy, I may interpret it as my intuition saying no, but my intuition may be saying go but be careful, or go tomorrow. So there are many variations of it. So people sometimes maybe getting confused about this, or maybe not knowing what intuition is really tapping into. And sometimes there is this pressure of, just like with that wise friend metaphor, I can always talk to my wise friend, and I can still ask my logic, and I can still use my intellect, and I can still talk to many other experts and do research and put everything together to make a combined decision. So sometimes people also put this pressure on intuition as it has to be right all the time, or I have to interpret it all correctly all the time. What I say is it's valuable input. Look at it, capture it, then you still have the freedom to do it or not do it and do more research about it.
Right.
Yeah, and a lot of times intuition is our opportunity to take a pause and just step back and look at the situation again.
Right. Do you find in your coaching and with your clients that they sometimes get confused by their emotions? In other words, they think it's intuition because they have a strong feeling. I said in my book, I said, the stronger the feeling, the less you can trust it as a guide for decision making.
That's
Do you
brilliant.
agree with that?
That's brilliant, Paul. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Um, the main method I use with my students and clients is what I call priming. And priming actually comes from that study I just mentioned, and Bolte, Goshke, and Kuhl. They primed their participants to be in a good mood before they gave them these word triad puzzles, and the solutions were coming faster
I
and
see.
more accurately.
That makes
And
sense.
when they primed them to be in a bad mood, it was worse. So, but the good mood is that calmness, that relaxation. So, um, and also another researcher who gives a warning about that is Joel Pearson. His book 2024 book Intuition Toolkit. One of the conditions he says when you have high emotions, just really question your intuition.
Right.
So I that's why I experiment with people to help them find ways that would calm not only their conscious thinking, so there's an opening for the intuition to shine and percolate up, and also to calm their emotions so that they're in that stillness. And I think of that stillness as like the surface of a lake, like a mirror, when it's so calm that you can throw a pebble and you can see the ripples, and the pebble is the question you're going to ask your intuition. So just getting into that stillness,
And that's
and
priming, right? That's part of priming.
that's priming,
You
then
know,
asking your question. Yeah.
I used to, that reminds me of another thing that I wrote, which was intuition is hard to get when you need it the most. And that's when you're frustrated or you're afraid or you're freaked out. And so you want an answer so bad, but you're not calm enough to hear this gentle voice. That's what you say. The voice of intuition is typically gentle. I say that too. It's like, but people, they're looking for a strong message and they have a strong feeling. And sometimes they go with that. And I'm just saying, hey, I like what you say about priming this method. Okay, so what are some methods for priming intuition? And
I
you have a
really
lot of them in your book. I mean, your
Yeah.
book is it's such a great textbook for learning to access intuition and benefit from
That's a good cue for me to show the book Down to Earth.
it. Right.
Demystify Intuition to Upgrade Your Life. Yeah, there are so many different ways to prime, and it's very personal. Some people respond to one type better than the others. So, a really good one is to use our body as kind of like an anchor. So, going from this constant rumination and thinking about this and that, what am I going to do about dinner? What am I going to do about my taxes? Whatever else is going on there, to come from always being in here to into your body, to really occupy the body. And how do we do that? It's doing things like in the mindfulness practice, for example, but you don't have to be fully trained in mindfulness to be able to do it. So let's do one together right now. Just feeling your feet on the floor, just feeling them touch the floor, feeling their weight on the floor. And when thoughts come, telling them, busy with the feet. Bye bye. See you later. And just feeling that. And then my arms, I just drop them on the chair and I'm just feeling them on the chair, feeling their weight on the chair. I can lean back and just feel my back on the chair and the chair supporting me. So just one simple example. Another one, the breath. I can put a hand here and just breathe and feel that movement. And just bringing all my attention here. And if thoughts come, busy breathing.
It's so
No.
it's kind of a paradox that the harder you try, the worse the result. it's sort of like this is a more of a kind of a letting go thing, letting yourself be receptive. I think intuition is kind of a receptive power. Um, and so you talk about that, about implicit learning and how we're constantly putting our intuition to use in the form of, and that's called implicit learning. Can you unpack that for us?
Yeah, when people come to me about intuition, sometimes people are sent to me by, for example, I had people who their spouse or their partner was sent to me, and they would say, I have no intuition, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. And it always makes me kind of chuckle inside in a little bit, because it's just like saying I have no thoughts. Intuition is always there and is always in our daily life. People even walk intuitively. You can go to some hike. You're walking on a surface you've never walked on before. The angles are different. The surface is different. You're not consciously thinking about how do I adjust how I hold my feet now? How do I do my balance? The balance itself is an intuitive thing. We're constantly in the moment, unconsciously responding to changing conditions because we've accumulated that experience. So we're working with gazillions of data on different surfaces and different angles and all of that. So whatever we do, kind of like on that autopilot mode, we're using our intuition because we've learned how to do it. Our muscles learned how to do it. Our whole body, brain, everything, neurological system learned how to do it.
Okay, so you have a strong background in, the left brain sciences and engineering. Has that ever been in conflict with your intuition? And how do you integrate the two? Because you strive in your book, you say that even though intuition is described as mystical or esoteric, you strive to ground intuition in science and everyday experience. So what's the relationship between the left brain and the right brain?
Yeah. Yeah, intuition and logic in my world, the way I view it, go hand in hand as um, just basically the same team. They're working on the same thing. They're working for me to make the best decisions possible, take care of myself the best way
Uh,
as the best as I can. So one example of conflict between logics, let's take a simple yes or no thing. Logic says yes, intuition says no. One example was this house that I'm in right now. Several years ago, and we're in a really competitive housing market area. Everything came together to say, this is it. Logically, experts, realtor friends, this is it. You gotta jump on this right now. You're gonna make your offer. My intuition weighed really heavy. It really felt like a no, 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 no. Oh my God, no, 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 no. And I went with logic. Later on, as I experienced what was happening, I realized what in my intuition was actually saying in that incident was, this is going to be painful because this house is so old, it's going to require so much fix and so much hard work. So be ready for it, was probably what it was saying. But even if it said no, I decided to listen to my logic because all the data, all the facts in that sense, I thought maybe I don't have enough experience and knowledge in this area to be able to trust my intuition. So I'll go with logic.
Okay. Well, that's a good example. How can someone tell the difference between intuition or wishful thinking?
Priming helps a lot with that because wishful thinking would be charged with emotions. Oh, I want this, I want this.
Right.
And if we can do the priming first, and to go back to different priming ways, you can go for a walk in nature that can prime you. As long as you're doing as much as possible, just focusing on your body, breath, and just emptying your mind. And For some people, playing a mindless computer game may even prime them. It really depends on their preferences, what really calms them down. So, getting into that calm state of mind and emotions, then asking again.
Okay.
If it was wishful thinking, it may even waver. I also do this shaking test with intuition. Intuition really anchors itself to what it says. Whereas wishful thinking, biases, impulses waver. They would say, go to this, go to right one day and or one moment and go to left the next moment, or eat this or eat that, or take a break, don't take a break. It'll just change its mind a lot. Yeah.
Okay. Now you talk about automatic writing, like you can take dictation from your intuition. It's almost as if you can relate to this part of yourself and ask it for information, which is automatic writing, and you say the intuition is non-judgmental. So somebody just starts writing. What does automatic writing look like?
Automatic writing is another way you can first prime, do something that would calm your emotions and your thinking. Then just I like doing it tactile with really pen and paper, but if you really love computers, you can do it that way too. And just like a stream of consciousness, but in this case, stream of non-consciousness because you're pulling information from your unconscious and subconscious mind. Just start with the prompt. If you don't know where to start or how to start, ask your intuition an easy question such as, what's a good thing I can do for myself tomorrow
Yeah,
or
okay.
tonight? Yeah. And
Hmm.
just start. Or if you have a specific question about just last night I was talking to someone about a job offer they were considering. What are some things I need to see about this job? What
Okay.
are some things I might be missing about this job? And just
Right.
let things flow. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned oracle cards in your book as a way to stimulate creativity because they're very free form. It's interesting because my background was in the area of divination, like tarot cards, and I always used to, people. I wrote a book about divination too, and defined divination as a way to stimulate your intuition in order to think outside the box. So, in other words, I say it isn't that the cards are giving you specific information or foretelling the future, but they're stimulating your intuition in one direction or another based on the archetypes in the cards. So why do you like oracle cards in particular?
They're fun, they're beautiful. They give me or the client or the student, the person, a lot of things to play with and focus on and use for priming. So for example, you can just look at the card in awe and just, oh my God, look at all these colors, look at all this art, and not really consciously think about it, just admire the back of it, the front of it, feel the texture, just touch it, and really connect with these cards as at the same time as you're priming yourself. Then ask a question and yeah, of course there's some chance component there in terms of what card you're pulling, but your non-conscious mind has already been working without you realizing it, and it will connect something to that card and give you the message you need to hear.
Right. Now you point out that it's easier to quiet your mind when you are or can imagine yourself in a safe, sacred space. Now we've only got a couple more minutes, and I want to ask you if someone is just starting to explore their intuition and they're in a safe, sacred place, what are the first three simple practices or habits that you would recommend that they adopt?
um it's related to the sacred space example or.
No, no, just in general, in order
Mhm.
to explore their intuition.
Okay, in order to explore their intuition, number one, I would start with noticing, just like with any change in our lives. As a coach, maybe I'm also trained to think that way. First, noticing, recognizing your intuition when it shows up, and learning to really capture it. And learning to prime yourself in various ways, achieving that calmness of mind and emotions, and also simplifying the question you ask for your intuition. So instead of asking, how do I get what I want? You can ask more focused questions, and you can ask questions that can be about what you can do. What's the first step in fixing my relationship with this person, instead of how can I make them like me more, for example. So, yeah, making your questions simpler for your intuition, noticing it, and when after you prime and ask your question to your intuition, the key one big tip about intuition, as you know really well, is to capture the first thing you get, because our conscious thinking mind is very good at writing scenarios and stories after that.
Right, right. Hey, well, thank you so much for being with us today. There's so much more that we could explore, but unfortunately, it's a half-hour show and we've run out of time. But I want to be sure to tell our listeners about your website. And here again, I just butchered your name, and I'm very sorry about that. And the website is your name, and that's Nil Demircubuk.com. Now that's NILDEMIRCUBUK.com.
Yeah,
And
and I have a shortcut for that. If they put just my name, NIL, those three letters, NIL dot coach, they'll get to the same place.
Nil.coach. Okay, well, thank you for that
Coach.
tip. Yeah, thank you very much. And I want to say to those who may be listening to Pathways Live on a Sunday morning and happen to tune into the show late, this is your host, Paul O'Brien, producer of the Visionary I Ching Oracle, an app that supports great decisions and perfect timing. We're so glad you are with us today and have the ability to review all the hundreds of interviews in our online archive. And you can play and or share this program whenever you want via the internet or as a free podcast, and I'll tell you how in a minute. Today we've been visiting with Nil Demircubuk, author of Down to Earth, Demystify Intuition to Upgrade Your Life. And I want to say a heartfelt thank you to all of you listeners for tuning in to Pathways, which is currently broadcast on KBOO FM in Portland, Oregon. Or perhaps you have a free subscription to our podcast, which you can find at divination.com. That's DIVI nation.com, or by searching for Pathways Radio on Paulo's YouTube channel, where you can also give us a thumbs up and subscribe. So, in any case, do feel free to forward a link to your friends. So, this is Paulo bidding you adieu and reminding you to tell your friends about Pathways Podcasts. And thanks again to Nil and to all of you listeners for tuning in and being a part of the Pathways conversation.
Thank you.